Oh, here we go again. The Department of Justice and the ATF have found yet another way to mess things up. Just when you thought they couldn't make a bigger mess, they get caught with their pants down. This blunder is so embarrassing. Even the best lawyers in the country had to write a letter to apologize. Today we'll talk about how the DOJ and ATF tried to reclassify gun parts, got caught lying about it, and are now scrambling to save face. But it gets better, or worse, depending on how you look at it. This mistake has huge implications for gun owners, manufacturers, and the Second Amendment as a whole. If you thought the gun debate was complicated before, wait until you hear how the ATF tried to change the rules on ghost guns and ended up getting themselves into some serious hot water. So, stick around. We're diving deep into what went wrong, why it matters, and how the Supreme Court might be ready to hand them a major loss. Just when you thought the ATF was done changing the rules, they decided to shake things up again with a fresh twist on gun control. The case Vanderstock versus Garland centers around the agency's redefinition of what exactly counts as a frame or receiver, and let's just say this tweak didn't go unnoticed. If you care about gun rights, especially the growing debate over ghost guns, this case is one you're going to want to follow closely. The Department of Justice and ATF are under fire, and we're about to break down why that matters. At the heart of Vanderstock versus Garland is the ATF's bold decision to expand what constitutes a gun frame or receiver under federal law. Before this rule, a frame or receiver was something pretty straightforward. It was the part of a gun that housed the firing mechanism. Simple, right? But in 2022, the ATF decided to widen that definition to include gun parts, kits, and unfinished frames or receivers. Now, it's not just about what a gun part is, but also what it could become with a little work. If that sounds murky, it's because it is. The ATF's rule change, initiated under the Harris-Biden administration, effectively turns what were once legal, unfinished parts into fully regulated firearms. That means you'd now need a background check to buy what used to be simple gun parts, and if you're selling them, you'd need an FFL. This has caused a massive stir among gun owners, manufacturers, and of course, legal experts. Ghost guns have become the centerpiece of this debate. Homemade firearms that aren't serialized, meaning they can't be traced by law enforcement. You order a parts kit online, put it together at home, and voila, you have a working firearm. These guns have gained attention because of their untraceable nature, which makes them a sticking point in the broader gun control conversation. The ATF's new rule aims to regulate ghost guns by treating unfinished parts as though they are completed firearms. The goal is to close what gun control advocates see as a dangerous loophole in federal law, one that has allowed people to sidestep background checks by building guns themselves. But opponents argue that this rule is overreach, punishing lawful gun owners who have been assembling firearms at home for generations. For decades, the ATF's approach to regulating gun parts was clear. Before the 2022 rule, the agency focused on the functional, completed components of a firearm, namely frames and receivers that were essential to making a firearm shoot. The ATF looked at what a part was in its current state, not what it could become. The new rule flips this on its head. Now, instead of just assessing the present state of a part, they're looking at what it could be, with additional modifications. It's like asking, what could this gun part turn into, rather than what is it now? By doing so, the ATF shifted its focus from completed firearms to anything that might one day be turned into a gun, a move that has sparked outrage in the gun community. This redefinition is at the core of Vanderstock versus Garland. The plaintiffs argue that by expanding the definition of a firearm to include unfinished parts, the ATF has overstepped its legal authority. Under the U.S. Constitution, it's Congress, not a federal agency, that has the power to make laws. By changing the rules on frames and receivers, the ATF effectively created a new regulation without congressional approval. That's a major sticking point for legal scholars and gun rights advocates alike, and it's the main issue the Supreme Court will have to tackle. To fully understand the significance of this case, it's important to look at the history of the ATF's rulings on gun parts. Historically, the ATF classified gun parts based on whether they were functional and necessary for the operation of a firearm. If a part didn't help fire a bullet, it wasn't considered a firearm. Simple as that. Ghost guns have been used by the ATF as a convenient excuse to push its overreaching agenda. Despite ghost guns being linked to only a tiny fraction of crimes, the ATF is blowing the issue out of proportion. It's another attempt by the ATF and DOJ to target law-abiding gun owners who enjoy building their own firearms at home. While ghost guns are a hot topic among gun control advocates, they represent a minuscule percentage of gun violence in the U.S. Still, the ATF under Biden is pushing for more regulation, claiming tighter control over DIY firearms is needed to prevent crime. In reality, this rule does little more than punish responsible gun owners and restrict their rights to build firearms, something Americans have done legally for generations. Vanderstock vs. Garland is about much more than so-called ghost guns. It's about the government overstepping its bounds and trampling on the Second Amendment. If the Supreme Court sides with the plaintiffs, it could overturn the ATF's ridiculous rule, restoring the definition of frames and receivers to what it was before 2022. That would be a huge win for gun rights advocates and a major blow to those who want stricter gun control. But if the court sides with the DOJ and ATF, it would mean even more burdensome background checks and tighter regulations on something that has always been an unregulated part of gun ownership. The stakes couldn't be higher for the future of gun rights. The ATF's new rule hasn't exactly won over gun enthusiasts, and for good reason. Their previous approach was pretty straightforward. If a part wasn't yet a functioning frame or receiver, it wasn't treated like a firearm. This old rule looked at the gun part as it was, not what it might become with a little DIY work. If you had an unfinished frame or receiver, it was just that, unfinished. But with the new rule, the ATF decided to play psychic. Now they're not just interested in what a part is today, but what it could become down the line. The ATF shifted from evaluating the current state of a gun part to its potential, asking, could this part one day become a frame or receiver if someone worked on it? And just like that, unfinished parts became firearms under federal law. This shift is more than just bureaucratic hair-splitting. It has major consequences for gun owners, manufacturers, and sellers. Suddenly, parts that were once legal to sell without background checks now require the same scrutiny as completed firearms. For gun parts, manufacturers, and retailers, This means additional paperwork, new licenses, and a lot more red tape. For gun owners, especially those who enjoy building their own firearms at home, it's a headache. What used to be a simple hobby has turned into a legal minefield. But the bigger issue here isn't just about gun parts. It's about who gets to make the rules. Constitution, Congress is the one with the power to pass laws, and now federal agencies like the ATF and the legal challenges around them argue that the ATF has gone beyond its authority of actively creating new gun control laws without Congress's approval. This brings up a much larger debate about administrative overreach. The ATF isn't alone when it comes to accusations of overstepping. Agencies like the EPA and FCC have also been in hot water for stretching their regulatory reach, bypassing Congress, and imposing rules all on their own. Whether it's environmental regulations or net neutrality, the concern that federal agencies are bypassing Congress has been growing for years. The ATF's involvement in Vanderstock v. Garland is just the latest in a long line of legal battles over how much power these agencies actually have, and more importantly, whether they've overstepped their boundaries. The ATF and DOJ, too, found themselves in especially hot water during this case. One of the central issues was a false statement they made before the U.S. Supreme Court. Specifically, the DOJ and ATF claimed that Polymer 80's product had changed over the years, which is what led them to reclassify it as a firearm in 2022. Back in 2017, they had decided that the Polymer 80 frame kit wasn't a firearm. Fast forward to 2022, and they suddenly changed their minds. Their explanation? They argued that the product had evolved between 2017 and 2022, so it needed to be reclassified. Seems like a neat way to explain the inconsistency, right? Except it wasn't true. The plaintiffs in the Vanderstock case were quick to expose the error. They pointed out that the product hadn't changed at all. In both 2017 and 2022, the Polymer 80 kit required significant additional machining before it could function as a firearm. This meant the ATF's reclassification wasn't based on any real changes to the product. It was based on a false premise, one that they tried to pass off before the highest court in the land. Getting caught in a lie before the U.S. Supreme Court is never a good look, especially when you're the DOJ and ATF, agencies that are supposed to uphold the law, not bend it. Once they were exposed, the DOJ had no choice but to issue a formal apology to the court. They admitted in a letter that the information they had provided was inaccurate. In legal terms, it was a material error, meaning it was a big enough mistake to potentially affect the outcome of the case. The embarrassment caused by this blunder was immense. After all, the DOJ's Solicitor General's office, which represents the government in Supreme Court cases, is supposed to be one of the most respected legal teams in the country. They're often referred to as the 10th Justice because they're meant to protect the integrity of the Supreme Court itself. So when they had to come clean about this error, it was a massive hit to their credibility. This isn't the first time a federal agency has made a major mistake in front of the courts, and the consequences have often been severe. In previous high-profile cases, such as with the EPA and FCC, similar blunders have led to rulings that severely restricted those agencies' powers. Courts don't take kindly to being misled, whether intentionally or by accident, especially when it involves agencies that are already facing accusations of overreach. For the DOJ and ATF, the fallout from this mistake could ripple beyond Vanderstock versus Garland. It raises serious questions about their credibility moving forward, especially in other gun control cases. If they're willing to fudge facts in one case, what's to say they won't do it again? This slip-up might make the courts more skeptical of the DOJ's and ATF's arguments in future gun control battles. When trust is broken at the highest levels, it's not easily rebuilt. In fact, this mistake could undermine the DOJ's broader gun control efforts altogether. The Biden administration has made gun control a priority, and the ATF's new rule on ghost guns was part of that push. But now, with this credibility issue hanging over their heads, it'll be much harder for them to convince the courts and the public that their regulations are necessary and based on solid facts. And there you have it, guys. The ATF's stupid attempt to rewrite the rules on ghost guns, a ridiculous Supreme Court blunder, and the fallout that's likely to ripple through future gun control efforts. This isn't just about one mistake. It's about the government overstepping and targeting lawful gun owners under the guise of public safety. When Trump becomes president, I think he should abolish the ATF. But I'm not sure he'd do it. What do you all think? Drop your comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, share it with your friends and family to spread the word, and subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.